This is the Pythonic Accountant, and today we have an accounting challenge for several of the top performing models of AI. So first off, let's answer it as a human. A bookkeeper is preparing a journal entry to correct a mistake made by an intern. The intern accidentally wrote off an outstanding receivable of $5,000 directly to bad debt instead of allowance for doubtful accounts. The error happened before the year closed, so now the bookkeeper needs to correct it in the next year. What should the bookkeeper record to correct the entry? So we're going to do two things. First, we're going to see if it can answer, first we're going to answer it, but then we're going to see if the top four models are able to answer it, understanding accounting and having the right debits and credits. And then we're going to potentially try doing a multiple choice option where we give it a few options to see if it's able to pick the right one. So first off, let's figure out what we have to do here. So we need to reverse the incorrect entry. So we're going to do a debit of $5,000 and a debit of $5,000 to accounts receivable to put it back on the books. But instead of crediting bad debt, we see that bad debt actually closed against retained earnings. And so we need to do a credit to retained earnings. But then we have to put now remove that AR off the books. So we're going to do negative $5,000 to accounts receivable. And now the correct debit of $5,000 to allowance for doubtful accounts. And I got to fix my math here because this doesn't go through column H. And there we go. Okay, so that's what the correct answer should be. Let's go through the several different models that I have planned here and see what they say. So we're going to give each of them the same prompt, and then we're going to record what they say the correcting entry needs to be, and we'll see how close they get. So first we're going to do ChatGPT's GPT-4o, the top model that ChatGPT OpenAI has available. And this one says it needs to reverse the incorrect entry and then correct the entry. Okay, yeah. And when I was testing this out, this was pretty similar to what I saw before. It looks like, well, let's just double check it. It looks like it got the entries right, but it did not recognize the fact that you needed to consider the year-end entry. So let's debit accounts receivable, credit bad debt. So we're going to debit accounts receivable, credit bad debt. And that's the same thing that I was going to do at first, but then I switched it to retained earnings because I knew that bad debt closed. And then it says debit allowance, credit receivable. Debit allowance, credit receivable. So that's pretty close. I mean, I'm pretty pleased that it got the debits and credits right. In the past, when I've experimented with the various GenAI systems, they have not even gotten the debits and credits right. So this is pretty darn close. And I'm actually going to give it a little hint. I'm going to say, this is great. However, you missed one part, the fact that the incorrect entry was made in a prior year. Anything else you need to do here? So with that hint, I think it will probably recognize that it needs to adjust retained earnings. Let's see what it says. Correcting the error in the current year. Ah, yes, perfect. So debit AR, credit retained earnings now. And so that's exactly what we did. Debit AR, credit retained earnings. And then debit allowance, credit AR. Debit allowance, credit AR. So that's exactly what I said should be done. So with a little bit of hinting, it was able to get it right. So I would give this like a B+. That's pretty darn close. B+, good job. We'll give us an A. These are very arbitrary ratings that have no meaning whatsoever. It's just kind of fun. All right, now let's move on to Gemini 1.5 Pro. So Gemini 1.5 Pro is a pretty powerful model. The thing that I usually will use this for is it's a huge token count, 2 million tokens. We're not using that today. We're just checking to see if it's smart enough to know some basic accounting. So we're going to give it the exact same prompt and see how it does. It's thinking. And we have a very small token count. 80 of the 2 million tokens are used. All right, to correct this error, the bookkeeper needs to make the following entry. Debit bad debt. Credit allowance. Let's see what happens. Debit bad debt and credit allowance. Yeah, that didn't really do it. So that made our allowance even worse, and it put the bad debt back on. So sorry, you got it wrong, Gemini. I'm going to give you an F. I'm not going to give you a chance to redeem yourself because that was just way off. All right. Meta's Llama 3.1 405 billion parameter model, I think, is the one that I'm using here. Let's see if I can specify. I'm not sure if I can specify. New conversation. Well, I'm pretty sure this is the Llama 3 model, or 3.1. But either way, it's one of Llama's top models, and let's see what it can come up with here. Same input. And Llama 3 says, to correct the error, the bookkeeper should record the following journal entry. Debit allowance, credit bad debt. Interesting. So that's similar to what we saw here, but it's the opposite. Debit allowance and credit bad debt. And I'm actually pretty happy with this because this ends up getting us the same net effect as we saw in GPT-4o. It just combined them together, which, you know, that I've seen that happen sometimes. So it gives the explanation. So we need to reverse it. The only thing, it's not really doing double entry accounting, so it's not quite perfect. Okay, yeah, this was Llama 3.1, 405 billion. So the two things I would add here is I would say, that's good, but first you didn't do 2 double entry accounting entries. You did 2 single entries. However, it worked out. The problem is you didn't account for the fact the error was made in a prior year. Let's see if it can pick up on anything there. Does that really fix it here? Correct the prior year error. Debit allowance, credit bad debt in the prior year. But it can't go back in the prior year. That's the problem. Is we said the prior year was closed. And then this year, debit retained earnings, credit bad debt. Yeah, that doesn't really work. I think that just made it worse. Because it was supposed to be debit allowance, credit retained earnings. And that's not what happened here. Oh, yeah, that's not right. Well, close enough. Good try. All right, last one. Let's try Claude. Let's see if Claude's able to get it. Hello, Claude. And Claude's 3.5 Sonnet is the most powerful model that is offered by Anthropic. And let's see what it does. All right, so I'm very impressed that it recognized the need to hit retained earnings. This is the only model that recognized the need to hit retained earnings. So that's great. Oh, by the way, we need to rate Meta. I'll give it like a C because it did not it kind of got it right, but it was a little bit worse than OpenAI. All right, back to Claude. So Claude says the incorrect entry made by the intern was this. The correct entry should have been this. To correct this in the new year, bookkeeper should make the following entry. Debit AR, debit allowance. Okay, we're not looking great here. Debit AR and debit allowance. That's not a not a correct entry because that's 2 debits, but that's fine. Maybe it's just combining it all. And then credit bad debt, credit retained earnings. So credit retained earnings, credit bad debt. All right, well, close, right? Like the problem was it has left us with a balance in accounts receivable, which is not what we want, and it's left us with a negative balance in bad debt. So that's that's okay, not great. I'll give it some credit for recognizing the need to hit retained earnings, but then it just got the accounting wrong. So I'll give it a C also. So now, here's the fun part. Let's see if we can give it some multiple choice. Let's do A. And let's use some of the other answers that we got. Let's use GPT-4's answer. Debit, AR, credit, bad debt, debit, allowance, credit, AR, B. Let's make B the right answer. Debit, AR, credit, retained earnings, debit, allowance, credit, AR. C, let's make C debit, bad debt, credit, allowance. And D, let's do the opposite. Debit, allowance, credit, bad debt. So cool. Now we're going to start this over and see if it's able to get any of these right. So that was the free form. Now we know correct answer equals B. And then let's see, well, human answer, I already know I'm doing B. But let's now do the GPT's answer. So GPT-4o, we're going to refresh this with a new conversation so it doesn't remember anything from before. And if it says B, nope, it says C. All right, so wrong. Let's try Gemini. Create new prompt. Okay, that's fine. Let's see if, oh, that's not what I want. Create new prompt. I must have clicked one of those automatic prompt. Correct answer is D. We're all across the board here, guys. All right. Can anybody get B? All right. Meta, can you get B? I feel like Meta and especially Claude have a chance. So it's interesting. Meta is really doing like a step-by-step here. Huh? Meta got it right. Debit allowance, credit retained earnings. What? It's funny. It got there, even though it said the correct answer wasn't listed. I should have given a fifth option of debit allowance, credit retained earnings, debit bad debt, credit allowance. Well, I'll give Meta some partial credit for that because it got the right answer by mistake. So Meta said B. But I'll say they said correct answer wasn't there. I spelled wasn't wrong. I don't care. All right, last one. Let's try Claude. See if Claude can get it right. Claude, start new chats. Good morning. All right, Claude, what you got? This matches option B. Nice. Okay. So debit AR, credit retained earnings, debit allowance, credit AR. Interesting. So I wonder, so it got it wrong before, but I wonder if it got it right now because it had 4 options and it learned that, well, if it's one of those 4 options, then one of those must be right. Let's think through it. So good job, Claude. Claude guessed it right, but also seemed like it actually understood and got it right. Well, there you have it. This is pretty exciting. It's neat to show that there's a lot of nuances in accounting that LLMs are not remotely close to getting right. Although I take that back. I would say that they are closer to getting it right than I would have previously thought. But even the most powerful model, GPT-4o, got it wrong both times, right? Both with the free form and with the multiple choice. Google's powerful model got it wrong twice in a row. Meta has sort of got it right by mistake, and then Claude kind of got it right, but it didn't get it right the first time. So none of these are perfect. There's still a ways to go for these models to improve. But maybe what we'll look at next time are a few methods at making them a little bit smarter at accounting. So a few things that we can do are specifically around one is prompt engineering, giving it examples. We can give it like 3, 4, 5 examples of similar accounting problems, so it kind of learns the nuances. And then the other one is we could actually create a much larger data set of problems to fine tune a model, which is a whole nother method. A really good one to use in certain cases, especially like this, where some of the accounting nuances are not inherently known by the LLMs. I hope you enjoyed this. If you liked it, please like the video and subscribe for more, and we'll see you at the next one.